Coming up on today's show, Sixers management really impressed with the job that Doc Rivers has done this year. Stephen A. Smith saying that more of the pressure is on James Harden as compared to Ben Simmons. Joel Embiid, Danny Green talk about 2-5 and kind of throw some shade toward his way. But first, make sure you subscribe to 76ers Now by Chat Sports. We're getting closer and closer to overtaking New York Knicks now in a battle between Philadelphia and New York. Who doesn't love a good old-fashioned battle between New York and Philly? I really want to overtake New York Knicks now. Marshall Green's done a good job of building that channel, but New York doesn't have anything on Philadelphia, and the Knicks for damn sure don't have anything on the Sixers. So if you want to stay in touch with all things Sixers all throughout the year, hit that red subscribe button down below, and let's ride. Welcome in to Philadelphia 76ers Now by Chat Sports. I'm your host, Chase Sr. First up on the docket for today's show, Sixers management really admiring the work that Doc Rivers has been able to do this year, given the tumultuous situations he's had to deal with, given Ben Simmons rumors circulating around this team, injury issues as well as COVID issues, and I think this kind of throws some cold water on those Mike D'Antoni rumors that we talked about last week. This coming from Marc Stein on his Substack. The 76ers are adamant that they believe Doc Rivers is the right coach to oversee the Joel Embiid, James Harden partnership and end the club's championship drought, according to one source with knowledge of Philadelphia's thinking. Now, the rumors with Mike D'Antoni are very interesting because, of course, he was the head coach of the Houston Rockets, helping lead James Harden to becoming one of the best offensive players that we've ever seen. He worked with Daryl Morey, and Daryl Morey did not hire Doc Rivers. It was Elton Brand who brought in Doc to replace Brett Brown. Really what it comes down to for me with Doc and his standing with this organization. Can the Sixers escape the second round for the first time dating back to 2001? We know it's well documented that Doc has blown the most 3-1 leads among all coaches in the history of the NBA in the playoffs, and that is really hovering around this team. It's the dark cloud that can't seemingly go away from haunting the Philadelphia 76ers. They get past the second round, and his job is safe. If they flame out this year in the second round like they did last year after making the deal for James Harden, that's when I think the temperature could get ratcheted up beneath Doc Rivers. I will say this, the way that he's been able to develop players, the way that he has handled the Ben Simmons situation, it didn't fracture this locker room. The development of Joel Embiid as well as Tyrese Maxey can be credited to Doc Rivers' watch. And one of the most important components of a head coach is his ability to really develop the talent on the roster and put them in positions to succeed. Back-to-back years, we've seen Joel Embiid last year finish runner-up in the MVP voting behind the Joker, and this year he's ahead of Nikola Jokic in MVP voting. And Maxey's development and his jump from year one to year two has been really, really impressive. It all comes down to the playoff showing for the Sixers this year now that you have James Harden paired up with Joel Embiid. So I want to ask Philadelphia this. My fellow Philly homies, grade Doc Rivers' coaching job this year on a scale from A to F. A, B, C, D, or F. Make sure you get your votes in the comment section. This will be the pinned comment on today's video. So if you get hit with that YouTube ad break, just scroll on down and get your votes in. We know this following the NBA trade deadline that Stephen A. Smith has never been the biggest fan of James Harden, and he hasn't been a big fan of this James Harden for Ben Simmons trade. He thinks the Nets won it, and he also thinks that more of the pressure is on James Harden this year as compared to Ben Simmons. And really, when I hear Stephen A. talk about James Harden, his concerns are some of the similar concerns that I have. How does he age? How does his body round into form, if it ever does? Now that he's getting older and the production has slipped, can he get back to being the similar player that he was with the Houston Rockets? But also, really when Kevin Durant was out of the lineup last year for Brooklyn, Harden was great. And I think in the discussion of this, over this discourse, Stephen A. Smith has forgotten how hard James Harden went for a long time with the Houston Rockets and how well he played with Houston and Brooklyn last year. And I think a lot of us have forgotten the fact that James Harden is one of the best offensive players that we've ever seen. And now that he's playing alongside Joel Embiid, the likely NBA MVP, if he's able to stay healthy, double fingers crossed on that one, he doesn't even have to be the same Rockets James Harden with Philadelphia because he's going to defer to Joel Embiid because the offense is still going to primarily go through him. Now, the big question does remain. Not if James Harden has more pressure on him than Ben Simmons, which Harden is Philadelphia going to get? From 2013 to 2020, he was marvelous. One of the best offensive stretches that we've ever seen. I mean, nearly a decade in which this guy was getting mad buckets. Almost 30 points per game, almost 8 dimes, 6 rebounds. He shot around 44% from the floor and 36% from distance. But so much has been made of his play slipping a little bit. There's certainly been that, but you also have to factor this in. He was playing with Kevin Durant. He was in a different role with the Nets. Even when KD and Kyrie were out of the lineup, he was more of a primary ball distributor. And the last 2 years with Brooklyn, 23.5 points per game. The dimes went up, going back to my original point. Rebounds went up. Field goal percentage, about the same the last 2 years as compared to that Houston stretch. And his three-point numbers have gone down just a little bit. But again, the pressure isn't going to be on James Harden to be the focal point of the Sixers offense because he is the 1B to the Joel Embiid 1A. And even if the Sixers get a fraction of what Harden was with the Houston Rockets, I think they're going to be fine, and they're going to be considered a serious factor in the Eastern Conference. Are you concerned when you look at the numbers and the eye test and the body, him adding a little bit of weight? He's never been in the peakest form of condition with Harden's slight decline. That's my next question for you. C for concerned, F for he's fine. Once more, you sound off in the comment section down below. Let's take a look at the newest NBA MVP odds as we are in the midst of the All-Star break. Sixers back in action on Friday against the Minnesota Timberwolves. Joel Embiid, man, plus 125, leading all vote getters in the early NBA MVP odds race. The Joker right in second place. Giannis in third, Steph Curry in fourth at 10-1 odds, which is actually pretty good value if he's able to translate the All-Star performance to the back half of the season. But really, in my opinion, and I'm not being biased by this, Embiid has been the most valuable player this year. Offensively, defensively, I look at the MVP voting as you take that player away from that team, what are they? The Sixers would be awful without Joel Embiid. And if you want to put some cheddar down on Embiid winning the MVP award, you can do so with our sportsbook partner, BetUS. All year, they've been offering a 125% deposit bonus only if you plug in that link down below, chatsports.com/bet, and the promo code CHAT125. This deal applies for anybody, no matter where you live. You enter that link in that promo code. Let's say you put in $100. By entering that information, you get an additional $125 back. Lastly, Ben Simmons rumors, Ben Simmons news, Ben Simmons notable tidbits coming from Embiid as well as Danny Green. We'll get you caught up on everything on this front as well. Embiid sat down with Malika Andrews and said, look, I tried with Ben Simmons, but at the end of the day, he's just a stiff. He didn't say that. Those are my words, but Embiid was just tired of dealing with big baby Ben. He said this to Malika. I did a lot of chasing around trying to get him back and to try to make him feel comfortable again. It was tough. I didn't care anymore. So really what I said goes in line with what Embiid kind of said to Malika Andrews. He was tired of dealing with Ben Simmons and the ongoing saga, the ongoing drama. If you can't take criticism as a professional athlete, you can make the argument you shouldn't be a professional athlete, and Ben Simmons did not handle the criticism well, and honestly, the criticism has been overblown over time from Doc and Embiid after Game 7 against Atlanta. Simmons mentally folded. He mentally collapsed after that Hawks playoff series, and I think from that point on, he put it in his mind that he couldn't return to the city of Philadelphia. As for Embiid goes, he's really grown as a player and as a leader, and as a person on and off the court. There were some rumblings that he wasn't the best leader early in his tenure with the Philadelphia 76ers. I think he's been better in that regard, and I think it really came full scope during the NBA All-Star break. He's up there at the podium talking to the media with his son Arthur in hand, with Arthur in tow. The jelly curls, by the way, elite on Arthur. And he's taken the ownership of really his flaws and his mistakes, but he's also taken on the leadership qualities that are necessary for a star player in the face of the franchise. He hasn't shied away from it. Ben Simmons shied away from all of that pressure, and I admire Embiid for that. And this year, having a marvelous campaign, better than last year when he finished second in NBA MVP voting. He's averaging almost 30 points per game, leading vote getter in the NBA, 11 rebounds, elite on both ends of the floor, shot blocking, rim protection, running the floor, bringing the ball up. Fascinated to see what this two-man game is going to be between Embiid as well as James Harden. And for a big guy who's like 285 pounds at 7 feet, to shoot nearly 50% from the floor and almost 37% from beyond the arc, he has changed the way that we look and evaluate centers moving forward. Speaking of that, two of the best centers in the NBA, the two best in my opinion right now, it's Embiid, it's Jokic. Who do you think goes on to win the NBA MVP? I think Embiid has the slight nod right now, but it's really, really close. J.E. for Embiid, NJ for the Joker. You let me know in the comment section right now. Danny Green also does a podcast that's featured on NBC Sports Philadelphia as well as Sirius XM. And I thought what he had to say about Ben Simmons was pretty interesting because he has come to his defense a lot over the last year and a half, but here couldn't really do it any longer. He said that Ben Simmons was not cordial with Seth Curry as well as Andre Drummond. Interested to see how that translates to Brooklyn. Danny Green also said, and this is really no surprise, that he highly doubts Ben Simmons is going to play on March 10th when Brooklyn comes back to the Wells Fargo Center. The atmosphere, if Simmons plays, is going to be unbelievable, and it's going to get ugly for 2-5, and he's brought a lot of that on him. Let's be real. He also said he doubts that there was a handshake before and maybe even after the game between Simmons and some members of this organization, which also isn't a surprise because Ben Simmons never took accountability for his flaws and his failures. He never wanted to own up to the fact that his shortcomings offensively really cost the Sixers in 2019 as well as last year. And that's my problem with Simmons. Like, we rooted on this guy for so long. We wanted him to do well. We saw so much potential with 2-5, but he never did the necessary things to really tap in to his fullest potential, and that became our problem with Simmons because we saw the ability. He just never really fully tapped into that. Because he can be a great player, he's just been a good player. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Chase_Senior. You have a question about the Sixers, you want to talk hoops, you want to talk NBA, you want to talk life, as I always say here on the channel, hit me up. Don't be shy. Grew up in Westchester, went to Temple, love this basketball team, at Chase_Senior on both social media platforms. Subscribe, and thanks for watching today's show.